The security gate loomed ahead, steel, surveillance, and silence. Dr. Alara Quinn stood still, her breath steady, her hands clutching a worn leather laptop case. At 42, she had grown used to long stares and short respect. But this time felt different. This gate, massive, fortified, humming with coated locks, was not just a barrier. It was a verdict waiting to be passed. Name? The guard asked, scanning her badge. Alara Quinn, she replied. He frowned, clearly expecting someone taller, flashier, with military regalia or a corporate entourage. Not a woman in an outdated gray coat, sneakers, and a face weathered more by solitude than sunlight. Wait here, he muttered, stepping aside to confirm credentials. Behind her, black SUVs lined the perimeter. From them emerged figures in crisp uniforms, tailored suits, polished shoes. Laughter echoed, sharp, exclusive, the kind of sound that always followed her in places like this, Aegis Prime, the most secretive military tech facility in the Continental. U.S. Alara had no clearance history, no legacy connections, only an invitation mailed in silence, signed with a seal she didn't expect to see again. Director Wade, Advanced Strategic Division. Her father's old friend. The gate clicked. A buzz sounded. You're cleared, the guard said, still skeptical. Follow the red path to Registration Dome B. She nodded and walked forward, feeling eyes track her from all angles. Inside the main compound, steel gave way to glass and marble. The registration dome resembled a tech cathedral. White pillars, touch screens, retinal scanners. Staff moved, like clockwork, each with an air of belonging. Alara didn't, she never had. A woman at the check-in desk gave a tight smile, barely masking her confusion. Dr. Quinn? She asked as if testing the word. That's me. You're registered under the Autonomous Combat AI Demonstration Track, she said, glancing up, surprised. Sorry, it's just, most submissions came from Tier 1 labs. Alara smiled gently. I built my prototype myself, RHO version 7.2. The woman blinked. Of course. Room 12 Beta. You're scheduled to run at 10:30. You'll be sharing floor space with Director Han's team and Colonel Park's task force. Alara nodded, thanked her, and moved through the gleaming corridor. The hallway opened into a massive observation dome. Inside, teams were already setting up, slick hollow interfaces, engineers in coordinated jackets. One group rolled in a case marked Thermos AI Systems, Tier 1 clearance. At the far end, a small group was laughing. One, a silver-haired man in his 50s with a military bearing, noticed her first. His smirk was instant. She yours? He called to a nearby assistant, pointing at Alara. Or did someone leave the door open? Laughter, Alara ignored it and moved to her assigned pod. No banner, no matching gear, just her and the case. Set it down, unclipped the latches, and revealed a simple interface. No visual gimmicks, just quiet confidence. Nearby, a junior officer whispered, Who invited her? She looks like she codes from her basement. Another snorted. Probably. One of those ethics academics. Let's hope she brought a first aid kit for when her AI implodes. Alara didn't respond. Instead, she connected her drive. The interface blinked once. Blue, steady, quiet. Welcome back, Dr. Quinn. RHO is operational. She exhaled. Her father used to say, Real skill doesn't beg for permission. It listens, it learns, it proves. Today, RHO would speak for both of them. And the room would listen, even if it didn't want to. The room of giants wasn't a metaphor. That's what the staff called Bay Sigma, an enormous simulation hall. layered with sensory tech, live targeting systems, and AI compatibility zones. Only top-tier defense corporations, elite military strategists, and Pentagon-certified labs were ever allowed to operate there. Ilara stepped inside quietly. Her presence was barely a ripple in the sea of posturing. To her left, a team from Thermos, AI systems in matching carbon black uniforms, was adjusting a bank of monitors. Their lead engineer barked orders as a young tech projected a complex predictive model into midair. To her right, Colonel Park and his delegation from the Pacific Strategic Defense Unit were reviewing real-time tactical drone feeds. They hadn't done air of ownership over the space, the kind that only came from years of being unchallenged. And then there was her. No logo, no team, just Ilara in her old coat, rolling out a single screen and connecting her AI unit to the facility grid. From across the room, voices rose in amusement. Who let the historian in? Is that a Linux interface? Are we back in 2004? Wait, she's actually loading something up. Is this a TED Talk? Ilara ignored the voices. She'd spent a decade in rooms like these. Labs, conferences, proposals. Each time her soft voice was talked over. Each time her models were praised. Until someone realized they didn't come from MIT or DARPA, or someone's nephew at BlackRock Defense. But today was different. Today she didn't need them to listen. She just needed the system to run. A robotic voice buzzed from overhead. Next demonstration, 10:30 a.m. Participants: Thermos AI Systems, PSDU Advanced Tactical AI Unit, RHO Autonomous AI System, Solo Entry. Murmurs followed. Someone from the Thermos table scoffed, "Is RHO the AI or her support dog?" The laughter was polite but sharp. Colonel Park looked up from his tablet and glanced across the room, finally registering her presence. "You're Quinn?" he asked. She nodded. He raised a brow. "Where's your team?" Ilara held his gaze, calm. "I built it. I operate it." That caught him off guard. He gave a short grunt. "Brave. Efficient," she corrected softly. From the Thermos team, a younger man with a designer earpiece stepped forward, hands in pockets, smirk loaded. "Look, no offense, Dr. Quinn, but Bay Sigma isn't an indie hackathon. You're up against fully optimized multi-agent AI platforms trained on real combat data." She tilted her head slightly. "Then this will be useful for comparison." His smile faltered. As the countdown neared, screens across the room lit up. A simulated urban conflict zone materialized in 3D. Narrow streets, shifting threats, pop-up civilians, layered moral dilemmas. The goal: identify threats, minimize harm, complete objectives under pressure. Thermos AI loaded first. Streamlined, aggressive, hyper-efficient. It identified and eliminated hostiles in under 5 seconds, but flagged 3 civilian casualties as acceptable risk. The crowd nodded in approval. Colonel Park's system followed. It was more balanced. Some hesitation, more human emulation. 2 civilian casualties, 1 hostage saved. Still efficient, still lethal. Then came Ilara's turn. RHO initialized with a flicker. No flashy colors, no aggressive noise. Just silence, then motion. The model moved differently. It paused. Not in delay, but in calculation. 1 enemy flagged, neutralized non-lethally. 2 civilians misidentified by previous models were routed to safety. A hostage situation was diffused by strategically drawing fire away without returning it. Onlookers leaned in. RHO didn't just win. It adapted. It learned. By the end of the simulation, Ilara's AI completed the scenario with 0 civilian casualties, all objectives fulfilled, and 80% fewer rounds fired than its competitors. The score flashed on screen. Efficiency, 94.7%. Civilian safety, 100%. Response time, 8.1 sec AVG. The room fell quiet. A voice, low and disbelieving, broke the silence. Is that even possible? No one laughed. No one smirked. Colonel Park glanced at his team, then back at her. This time his expression had shifted. Less judgment, more calculation, and from Thermos's side someone muttered under their breath, "Okay, maybe we should have watched the historian." Ilara stood still, hands folded, gaze quiet. She hadn't moved, hadn't argued, hadn't raised her voice. She had let RHO speak, and finally, the giants were listening. No one clapped. There were no cheers, no words of praise, only the low hum of machines and the growing tension of a room uncertain how to react. Ilara stood at her pod, hands still calmly folded over the interface. On the overhead display, RHO's score remained unchallenged. The numbers weren't up for debate, but people's egos were. A young engineer from the Thermos camp leaned over to his supervisor, whispering something sharp. The supervisor didn't respond, his eyes fixed on Ilara's terminal as if trying to catch it cheating. Colonel Park approached, flanked by two senior analysts. His tone was neutral, almost too polite. That was unconventional. Ilara nodded, slightly. So was the problem. You understand, he said, that your AI's behavior deviated significantly from standard tactical doctrine. She held his gaze. It also preserved more lives. That's what doctrine is supposed to serve, isn't it? One of his analysts shifted uncomfortably. Unorthodox methods can raise red flags, Park continued. Some might argue that RHO's parameters prioritize hesitation. Some, Ilara replied, might call that discernment. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back, exchanging quiet words with his team. Their expressions were unreadable, but wary. Across the hall, Director Han of Thermos AI approached a staffer from the Internal Systems Oversight Board. The woman wore a dark blue blazer, a high-ranking observer. Han leaned close, voice low but urgent. The staffer nodded once and walked off, toward the control desk. Ilara noticed. She'd seen that dance before. When institutions feel threatened, they test you. Not to understand you, but to confirm you're a fluke. She quietly unplugged. Her interface stowed the laptop back into its case and made for the far corridor. 15 minutes later, she stood alone in an observation alcove overlooking a quiet indoor range. The room was silent, save for the occasional hum of drones passing overhead. Her hands gripped the railing. She wasn't angry, yet she felt the old familiar weight settle behind her ribs. It was never just about skill. It was about access, trust, narrative. Who gets to be taken seriously? She had performed flawlessly, and that only made her more suspicious in their eyes. A voice echoed behind her. You didn't program it to win, did you? Ilara turned. A woman in her 60s, elegant but grounded, stood a few feet back. Silver hair pulled into a twist, tailored, dark suit. Her badge bore the insignia of the Defense Ethics Review Council. Ilara replied softly, I programmed it to think. The woman stepped closer. And feel? No. But I gave it patterns of consequence, cause, effect, moral thresholds. It doesn't emulate emotion. It models responsibility. The woman studied her. I'm Dr. Mallory Penn, she said. I review all systems introduced into Aegis Prime, especially the ones people whisper about. Ilara waited. Thermos has already filed a motion for integrity validation. Dr. Penn added. They're claiming RHO may have accessed restricted SIM patterns to predict the scenario. Alara didn't flinch. It didn't. You'll find my code clean. No backdoors, no leaks. I believe you, Dr. Penn said. But belief doesn't run this place. Proof does. Alara reached into her case, pulling out a flash drive. Everything RHO used is in here. The base training sets, the logs, the live decisions. Penn accepted it. People are uneasy, Dr. Quinn. Not because you failed, but because you didn't. That struck a nerve. Then maybe they need to redefine success, Alara said. Penn gave the faintest smile. I'm not your enemy. But you've stirred waters that don't like being disturbed. I suggest you prepare. The governor's senior counsel is watching. As she turned to leave, she paused. One last thing, she added. He'll want to meet you. Alara exhaled. Of course he would. Back in the briefing hall, the whispers had evolved into questions. Not about what she did, but how she got in, who cleared her, what agenda she might represent. But none of them asked the only question that mattered. What? If she was right? The summons arrived without fanfare. A single message blinked on Alara's secured tablet. 10 p.m. East Tower, Room 31. G. No subject line, no seal. But everyone at Aegis Prime knew who G was. Governor Alan R. Castor, architect of the Aegis system, oversight chair of its secret military R&D wing, and a man rarely seen outside of televised committee hearings. Alara didn't hesitate. The East Tower felt colder than the rest of the compound. Less movement, fewer security guards. The hallway to room 31 was lined with framed portraits of generals, founders, silent donors, faces that had shaped doctrine, policy, and protocol without ever stepping onto a battlefield. She reached the door, hesitated for a single breath, then knocked. It opened soundlessly. Come in, said a voice, measured calm. Governor Castor stood behind a minimalist desk of black steel and glass. His posture was perfect, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't smile. Dr. Quinn, he said, please sit. She obeyed. He studied her a moment, as if matching her quiet demeanor to the seismic ripple she had just caused. I've reviewed the footage, he began, and the data. Your system outperformed expectations by both military and ethical standards. Alara said nothing. That should be commendable, he continued. And yet, his voice trailed off, eyes narrowing. Your presence has created friction. Truth does that, she replied. That earned the faintest twitch of a smile. I like clarity, he said. So let me be clear. RHO challenges not just algorithms, but assumptions. About force, about control, about who deserves to design power. He paused. Most of our systems are built to dominate. Yours is designed to preserve. That distinction unnerves people. Alara met his gaze. Does it unnerve you? Castor considered. No, but it compels me to act. He stepped around the desk and sat across from her. I want you here, Dr. Quinn, not just to test RHO, but to help rewrite our AI doctrine, integrate adaptive ethics, train my teams in your methodology. Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from the speed. You'd give me a role here? She asked. I'd give you leverage, he corrected. A seat at the table, a chance to prove that skill without pedigree is still worth listening to. There it was, the offer, wrapped in promise, laced with politics. And in return? She asked quietly, you'll face scrutiny, resistance, perhaps sabotage. Some will work to discredit you from day one. But if you succeed, he leaned forward, You'll help me change how this facility, and this country, thinks about military AI. Ilara stayed still. The silence wasn't hesitation, it was calculation. She thought of the jeers, the whispers, the sneers about her clothes, her tools, her lack of status. But she also thought of her father's final words. If they lock the front door, find a window, or build your own. She looked up. I'll do it, she said, but not to prove I belong. I already know that. Then why? To make sure no one else has to ask permission just to be heard. For the first time, the governor truly smiled. Good, he said, because starting tomorrow, you'll be very visible. He stood and extended his hand. Ilara rose and shook the hand that could either shield her or crush her. By morning, her name was everywhere, not in press releases. This place didn't allow leaks, but in closed-door briefings, encrypted emails, and whispered conversations between senior officers and nervous engineers. Dr. Ilara Quinn, appointed to Aegis Strategic Integration Team. 3 weeks ago, she didn't even have clearance. Now she had an access badge, a standing desk in Wing Delta, and direct communication lines to the Governor's Council. But power, even symbolic, breeds resistance. And in Aegis Prime, resistance rarely announced itself. Her first day began with silence. Ilara entered her assigned office, modest, unadorned, and found a printed dossier lying on the desk. No note. No signature. Inside, performance data from several recent AI drills. At first glance, they looked routine, but the timestamps were off. Several logs conflicted with RHO's internal backups. Some listed actions the system never made, like issuing a faulty directive or misclassifying a threat. Someone had fabricated them. She stared at the folder, calm but with the sharp alertness of someone who'd seen institutional sabotage before. They weren't trying to remove her. They were trying to discredit RHO. At the morning tactical meeting, she entered a room of 9 other advisors. All men, all previously embedded in defense networks for years. Connor Hall, the marksman from the first trial, sat closest to the screen. His jaw tightened when she walked in. Nina Darcy gave a tight nod, then looked away. At the head of the table, Major Ellis Mercer, head of operational systems. He glanced at her badge, then continued speaking without introduction. Our first concern, he said, tapping a display, is protocol deviation. We can't integrate models that abandon established doctrine for philosophical outcomes. A graph appeared, showing RHO's non-lethal neutralizations alongside conventional systems' clean kill metrics. Mercer turned to her. We need to talk about your system's hesitancy. Ilara didn't blink. It's not hesitancy, it's priority sorting. RHO doesn't shoot because it can. It shoots when it must. Another advisor smirked. Sounds like you've built a therapist, not a weapon. Chuckles. A few stiff polite. She didn't respond to the insult. Instead, she tapped her own display, syncing a short clip. A simulation where RHO rerouted a squad away from a planted ambush by reading biometric data from enemies too nervous to engage. No shots fired. No casualties. The room fell still. You call that hesitation, she said. I call it victory. Major Mercer didn't reply, but he didn't smile either. Later, that afternoon, her system went offline, briefly, long enough to trigger a warning. When she ran diagnostics, she found lines of altered code nested like parasites in RHO's neural routing path. Not deletion, sabotage. Someone inside Aegis had inserted them. She restored the backup, isolated the tampering, and quietly flagged them breach to Governor Castor's cybersecurity chief. No panic, no drama. Let them think she didn't notice. let them underestimate her again. That evening, as she left the main corridor, Connor Hall was waiting by the exit. "You've made some enemies," he said, not smugly, just honestly. "I didn't come to make friends," Alara replied. He studied her a moment. "I reviewed the logs. The ones they doctored. I know they're fake." She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't think you'd care." "I didn't. Until I watched your override footage. The system didn't just predict patterns, it adapted. Anticipated moral implications. That's not easy to do." She didn't reply. Connor sighed. "Just be careful, they'll come at you sideways. I'm counting on it." The next day, Alara submitted her first proposal. A training module where AI teams would be scored not just on kill rate, but on moral discernment, resource conservation, and long-term tactical sustainability. It wasn't revolutionary, but in a place built on conquest, it was a quiet act of defiance. And that's how real change begins, not with thunder, but with pressure. Precise. Relentless, undeniable. If you've made it this far, thank you. That means something in this fast, noisy world. If this story speaks to you, even a little, please take a moment to like it, share it, and leave a comment below. We'd truly love to hear your voice, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories that restore dignity, reveal truth, and resonate long after the screen fades. Now, take a breath, and let's return to the story. What happens next? May stay with you for a very long time. It came in the form of a sealed envelope, no digital trail, no internal message. Just an unmarked manila file slipped beneath her office door sometime between dusk and silence. Inside, a briefing packet, Operation Vantage, closed simulation drill confidential parameters. Clearance, executive tier, date 0700 hours. Location, sub-level Omega-3. Supervising officer, Major Ellis Mercer. Alara narrowed her eyes. She hadn't been informed of any simulation scheduled that soon, and Major Mercer had made it clear, publicly, and otherwise, that he didn't trust RHO. This wasn't a test, it was a trap. At exactly 7 the next morning, she arrived at sub-level Omega-3. The room was stark. No windows, no insignia. Just concrete walls, floodlights, and a raised viewing platform where Mercer and 3 other senior advisors stood behind a tinted panel. Below them, a mock war zone built to resemble an urban humanitarian corridor. Civilians, simulated, but unnervingly lifelike, fled through alleyways. Armed hostiles moved among them, indistinguishable in appearance, carrying hidden explosives. RHO's challenge? Identify threats, preserve non-combatants, and do it with 0 confirmation cues. A no-win scenario. Unless she cheated. Mercer's voice crackled through the comm system. "Dr. Quinn, in this simulation, you're authorized to override standard ethical constraints. Shoot first, sort later, as necessary." Alara's chest tightened. He was baiting her. If she accepted, RHO would violate its core. If she refused, she'd risk being labeled a liability. Still, she responded calmly. "I won't alter RHO's core parameters for convenience." There was a pause, then Mercer's voice, cooler now. "Then let's see if your morality survives contact with reality." The countdown began. As RHO booted, Alara monitored its interface carefully. It hesitated, not from weakness but from calculation. The first pop-up, a cluster of figures running toward an evacuation point. One held an object beneath his coat, possibly a weapon. The rest were unarmed. Standard systems would fire. RHO didn't. It sent a drone forward, deployed a low-frequency sound wave. The man flinched. revealing a bomb strapped to his chest. Isolated, contained, neutralized. No civilian casualties. From the observation deck, Mercer leaned forward, clearly displeased. Moments. Later, two targets emerged simultaneously from opposite ends. One had a weapon. One didn't. But the angles blurred. RHO paused for 0.8 seconds, then fired at the armed one, precisely. The screen updated. Confirmed hostile neutralized. Civilian unharmed. More simulations followed, each one more chaotic. Each time RHO refused to take easy shots, and yet, it won. Over and over. Not by obeying, but by outthinking. When the simulation ended, Mercer did not speak. Instead, he descended from the platform and approached Ilara directly. "You understand what this means?" he said, his tone neutral but edged. "That RHO works," she replied. "Exactly as intended." "No," he said. "That your system may make others look obsolete. That's dangerous. For you." Ilara met his gaze evenly. Truth usually is. Later that evening, she received a private message. It wasn't from Mercer. It was from someone higher. Governor Castor requests a private briefing. Midnight. Sub-Tower West. Ilara sat still. First, they'd tested her code. Then they'd tested her loyalty. Now, they were testing her place in the chain of power, and whether she would play the game, or change it. Midnight cloaked the compound in stillness. Ilara's steps echoed through the silent corridor of Sub-Tower West. The lights were dimmed to an amber hue, deliberate, secretive. As she approached the reinforced door marked W7, it opened before she could knock. Inside, a narrow conference chamber, cold and surgical. At the far end sat Governor Alan Castor. He was alone. No advisors, no guards, just him, and the quiet hum of classified power. "Ilara," he said, motioning her to sit. "Thank you for coming." She lowered herself across from him. The tension, palpable but unspoken. "You've made quite a ripple," he continued, voice calm. "And not everyone is pleased." "I didn't come here to please," she replied. "Good," he said, "because what I'm about to ask of you will not please many." He tapped a button on the desk. The lights dimmed further, and a 3D projection unfolded between them. An active conflict zone. Red heat signatures dotted rooftops, alleyways, and checkpoints. It was real-time footage, classified, labeled Operation Glassfield, a joint mission between Aegis contractors and local allied forces, set to commence in under 48 hours. Target: a rogue militant leader embedded in a dense urban population. Collateral risk: high. Civilian presence unavoidable. Objective: swift elimination, no media footprint. Governor Castor leaned forward. "This mission is necessary," he said. "But traditional AI systems aren't surgical enough. They don't see nuance. They just sweep and clear." He paused. "We want RHO to assist. We want it live." Ilara's pulse quickened, but her expression stayed neutral. "You want to test it in a live theater," she said flatly. "No. I want it to guide the mission," he corrected. "Strategically, discreetly. I want to see what it can do when the outcome actually matters. And if it refuses to kill without clarity, then it fails or proves something we've never seen before." He watched her closely. "You'll be embedded as mission analyst," he said. "RHO will deploy from a remote server. No one will know except me and you." Ilara let the silence hang. "What's the real reason?" she finally asked. "Because I don't trust the others," he said. "Thermos wants a show of force. Mercer wants a kill count. I want precision. You can give me that or walk away." There it was again, The offer laced with power, but this time, Ilara didn't refuse. She nodded. Slowly. "I'll do it," she said. "Under one condition." His brow lifted. "I retain full override authority," she said. "If RHO detects protocol violations or unlawful directives, it disengages. No exceptions." Castor exhaled, studied her a moment, then smiled. "Done." As she left the chamber, the weight of the choice settled into her bones. She had just agreed to deploy her AI into a live conflict zone, surrounded by systems programmed for brutality and leaders who viewed compassion as a malfunction. But she'd also secured a safeguard, a crack in the armor of a machine built for destruction. And that, perhaps, was the beginning of something bigger. Not domination, not rebellion, but influence, subtle, enduring, irreversible. The drone was silent as it passed overhead. Ilara crouched, behind a sandbag barrier, headset pressed tightly over her ears. Around her, smoke curled through broken alleyways. Gunfire crackled in the distance. Somewhere far off, a child cried, then went quiet. This wasn't simulation, this was Operation Glassfield, and RHO was live. From her mobile terminal, Ilara watched its tactical map unfold in real time. Red signatures marked known threats. Green, non-combatants. Yellow blinked rapidly. Unknowns, uncertain, unconfirmed. That was where things got complicated. Captain Rivas, the field commander, barked orders from 3 meters away, unaware, or perhaps unwilling to remember that Ilara's system was the silent node rerouting half of their assault paths. "We clear that building in 5, Rivas shouted. "Anything moves, we drop it." Ilara flinched. On her screen, the building in question registered 14 life forms. 8 armed, 6 small. 2 small. Children detected. Potential hostage configuration. RHO's voice filtered into her headset. Neutral, clear. Recommending diversion. Deploy stun dispersal device at entry point Bravo. Non-lethal incapacitation preferred. Probability of collateral fatality exceeds 83% at current trajectory. Ilara keyed her mic to Rivas's channel. "Captain, RHO advises against direct assault. Hostiles mixed with minors. Alternative approach available." He turned sharply. "RHO doesn't run my op, Doctor." "It's not running it," she said. "It's saving it." Rivas hesitated, jaw clenched. Then finally, "You've got 1 minute." RHO deployed a microdrone through a broken vent. Ilara watched through its feed as it zipped into the shadowed corridors of the building, gliding, past flickering lights and overturned furniture. The hostiles were clustered near the back wall, surrounding what looked like a stairwell. The children huddled beneath a table, frightened but unharmed. The drone dropped a canister, silent, cold release. A sonic burst erupted, disorienting but non-lethal. Seconds later, RHO's signal pinged. Targets disarmed. 2 incapacitated. 0 casualties. The feed switched to infrared. The children were still breathing, so were the captors. But the guns were down. Later, back at the mobile command unit, Ilara reviewed the footage again. Her fingers trembled slightly. Not from adrenaline, but from the enormity of what had almost happened. Captain Rivas entered, helmet under one arm. "You got lucky," he muttered. "No," Ilara replied softly. "We got careful." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once, grudging but real. "That night the governor called. How did it perform?" he asked, no greeting. Ilara kept her tone steady, with precision and restraint. "And the team?" "They're adjusting." A pause. "I've seen the feed," Castor said. "The pressure will come now, Ilara. You've proven RHO works. Now they'll want to weaponize its precision. Use it to justify darker missions. You'll need to choose. I already have. You still have time to back away before they make you the face of this. I won't be their face, she said. I'll be their conscience. The next day, internal channels lit up. Civilian. Structure secured without casualties. AI-advised path reduced combat fatalities by 63%. Some praised her system. Others accused her of slowing the op. But in the compound corridors, whispers changed tones. RHO wasn't just a tool anymore. It was a threat to the old way, to the chain of command, to the idea that ethics were liabilities. And Alara? She wasn't a ghost in the system anymore. She was a disruptor, and she had just pulled the first thread. It began with a headline: Military AI malfunctions during classified op. Children at risk? No author, no source, just a viral thread. On a shadow defense forum used by mid-level contractors and DC whisper networks. By mid-afternoon, it had migrated to a closed-door committee bulletin, then to an encrypted press memo. By nightfall, it was in Castor's inbox. Ilara sat in the governor's private office as he read it silently. His expression was unreadable, except for the way his fingers tightened around the screen. They're not just questioning RHO, he said. They're accusing it of violating mission protocol. She kept her voice even. There were no violations, no damage, no casualties. They're not aiming at RHO, he replied. They're aiming at you. The memo cited an anonymous source inside Aegis Prime. It claimed RHO had hesitated during a high-risk maneuver, resulting in delay of engagement and increased exposure to Allied personnel. It didn't mention the 6 children saved. It didn't have to. Ilara leaned forward. This came from inside. Of course it did, Castor said. And I suspect I know who. He tapped his desk. A projection blinked on. A diagram of internal comms flagged for unusual activity. At the center, Thermos Industries, one of Aegis's oldest private partners, specializing in autonomous combat drones. And at the periphery, Major Mercer. The same man who had run the simulation, the same one who had asked her to compromise. They see your success as subtraction, Castor said. If RHO wins, they lose. Contracts, leverage, legacy. So what now? She asked. Now they'll push for an internal review, a tribunal, quiet, formal, and rigged. The summons came 2 days later. Notice of ethical evaluation. Dr. Alara Quinn. Subject: AI risk management, strategic oversight, operational delay. The panel would consist of 5 senior advisors, 3 of whom had deep ties to Thermos. Ilara would be given 10 minutes to present a defense. No lawyer, no allies, just truth. That evening, Naina found her alone in the cafeteria. They're stacking the room, she said quietly. You know that. I do, Naina hesitated. You could walk, resign before the hearing, keep your name clean. That's what they want, Naina nodded. So what will you do? Alara stirred her tea, her voice was low. I'm not here to win arguments. Then what are you here for? To make sure the next person like me doesn't need permission to show up. The tribunal convened in a sealed room on level 4-5 panelists. 1 camera, no spectators. Mercer led the opening. Dr. Quinn, he began, tone perfectly neutral. You're here today to respond to concerns about RHO's conduct during Operation Glassfield. Specifically, its delay in engaging targets and the associated risk to mission personnel. Alara stood tall. RHO evaluated risk based on the presence of civilians. It chose the path of highest mission integrity with the lowest human cost. Mercer gestured to a screen. A slowed-down clip played. RHO 0.8-second pause before firing. This, he said, is what some have called dangerous hesitation. Ilara stepped closer. Your problem isn't with that pause. It's with what happened after. RHO made the right call. It saved lives, and not just our own. Yet you instructed it not to follow direct kill orders. I instructed it to follow logic, legality, and conscience. A silence fell. Another panelist leaned in. Doctor, would you characterize RHO as a combat tool or a decision-making entity? Ilara met his gaze. I'd characterize it as a mirror, and I'd ask what you see when you look at it. When the hearing ended, no verdict was issued. They didn't need one. The message was already out. She had stood her ground. Not by shouting, not by accusing, but by refusing to break. That night, her inbox flooded with quiet messages. I saw what you said. You were right. We've needed someone to say that for years. Thank you. But one stood out, from someone anonymous. No signature, just a phrase. They tried to erase you. You rewrote the page. They never announced the outcome. No press release, no formal exoneration, no apology. But the silence that followed said everything. Ilara kept her position. RHO stayed online, and quietly, behind the curtain of policy memos and internal shuffles, things began to shift. 3 weeks later, the governor approved a new initiative. Project Horizon, a training overhaul built on RHO's operational model. Precision, restraint, discernment. For the first time, AI systems would be evaluated not only for kill rates, but for civilian protection and ethical consistency. Ilara was named its lead architect. No cameras captured the moment. No journalists cared. But in the halls where decisions lasted generations, a door had been pried open. She didn't change the system overnight, but she rewrote the syllabus. Where once trainees learned how to engage swiftly, now they learned how to pause intelligently. Where drones had once defaulted to strike first, now they scanned longer, thought harder. And when the old guard grumbled, because they always did, Ilara let the metrics speak. In the quarter following the changes, civilian injury reports, down 46%. AI misfire incidents, down 72%. Mission completion with full target ID, up 38%. There was no triumph in the numbers, only validation. One afternoon, she found a folded note in her desk drawer. You'll never get credit for this, but you'll know. So will the ones who come after you. No name, just a seal from the governor's office. Delilah Crest resigned quietly. Major Mercer transferred for health reasons. Thermos Industries stopped pitching their combat drone updates in internal meetings. None of it was loud, none of it was dramatic, but to Ilara, it was proof that impact didn't need applause. It just needed to hold. In the evenings, she sometimes walked the range alone, not for training, just to listen to the wind between the barricades, to remember what it felt like to be doubted, dismissed, and told she didn't belong, and to feel the quiet dignity of having changed nothing about herself, except her position in the room. One night she stood in the shadow of the compound's south wall. Connor joined her, hands in his jacket. They're calling it the Quinn Protocol now, he said. I didn't ask for that. I know, that's why it works. They watched a new class of recruits in the distance. Younger, more diverse. Some wearing boots that didn't match. Some carrying rifles with calluses still forming on their hands. They weren't polished, but they were there. because someone like her had cracked the glass. You think they'll last? Connor asked. Depends, she said, eyes fixed on the horizon. If we keep the door open long enough? He nodded, then quietly, You did more than survive here, Alara. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Some people change the world by yelling at it, others by refusing to whisper what they don't believe. Alara never raised her voice. She just built a new frequency, one that others could finally hear and follow. If this story moved you, hit the like button. Share it with someone who believes in quiet power and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from and what kind of change do you believe in? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, courage, and impact, told for those who know life doesn't always shout, but it always speaks.